Another movie of the week, lads, for movie night, Cinderella Man. Oh, what a show. This is such an underrated movie. It's insane. And let me tell you, it's not a boxing movie. It's about survival. It's about the Great Depression. When people, they didn't know where their next meal was coming from, like when hope was like as rare as a steady paycheck. I mean, it was, and into that storm walks James Braddock, played by Russell Crowe, a man written off by the world, and yet somehow he gets everything back. And this is a true story. True story. This is what makes this movie even more gripping and intense and insane. And, if you think boxing is just about punches, lads, well, this film will knock that idea clean out of your head, because Cinderella Man, it ain't just about the ring. It's about family, dignity, resilience. Russell Crowe absolutely wrecked himself for this role. And the man lost over 50 pounds, trained for almost a year, set up a full boxing ring in his home farm in Australia. That's some balls, man. And still ended up with concussions and cracked teeth, Like, he even said this movie was 4 to 5 times more difficult than Gladiator. Let's get into it. And girls, any girls out there, I honestly, there is some boxing, of course there is, but it's not the raw bang bang bang. This really is, because they set the story up so well that you can feel every punch with them. You can feel that that Russell Crowe, he's at risk. You can feel his wife, she's feeling every punch with them. It's very, very, very well done. So it's not just about the punch, it's the ripple effect from that punch that affects Paul Giamatti, the coach, Renée Zellweger, the wife, right? Just amazing. And then the way that the crowd really latched onto the guy, And James Braddock was a boxer who had a lot of promise, and injuries and losses knocked him down, right? And by the time the Great Depression hit, he was done. He was over. Couldn't get fights, couldn't feed his kids, his career, reputation, pride, all gone. And that's where the movie hits hardest. He's not fighting for titles. He's not fighting for money. He's fighting to just keep the kids warm. And then comes the comeback, lads. Just sheer chance. I mean, Braddock gets another title fight, a fill-in, and he goes up and he wins the fight. And then people, all of a sudden, he becomes a symbol of hope for every American family suffering through the Depression. He's the man who refuses to stay down, and it's based on a true story. Directed by Ron Howard. It came out in 2005. That's right, 2005, lads. With Russell Crowe, brilliant. Paul Giamatti, brilliant. Got nominated for the Oscar for this. And Renée Zellweger plays the wife, and the production was grueling. The professional boxers were brought in as opponents, right? And they were told to land their blows close to Crowe's body. And the problem was sometimes they missed the close part. And Crowe got smashed up. Concussions, broken teeth, cracked teeth, bruises. The man suffered for the movie, like. And here's, like, for the Braddock Bear fight. Sorry, guys. It was the first time Crowe actually fought another actor instead of a real boxer. Ron Howard actually admitted that the crew were they were on pins and needles because they needed it to be authentic. But then again, he's not an actual professional boxer. So they were very, very cautious and nervous about this one. And the dockyard scenes, they weren't sets. They weren't just sets. They were modeled on real Depression era photographed by Lewis Hine, right, whose image actually helped change labor laws in America, and that's why they look so painfully authentic. As Braddock starts winning again, the story rises, right? Fight after fight, he proves himself, right? Winning, and then comes the Max Bear. True story, and this guy was scary. And in the film, Craig Bierko, I think his name is, if I'm pronouncing that correct, Brilliant performance by him. We haven't seen much of this actor out there much, but he's really, really good in this movie. And, you know, he's almost proud of killing two opponents in the ring. Like, this is where the stakes go higher here, lads. It's up, the ante's up here, you know? And here's the truth. Bear killed one man in the ring. True story. And it haunted him for the rest of his life, apparently. Now, sometimes people are saying, yeah, well, he's proud, but then, you know, it did haunt him for the rest of his life. I think afterwards, you know? And that's something to swallow, man. That's something to swallow. You know, when Campbell died, Bear broke down in tears, apparently, and even donated his prize money to the Campbell family. And the film paints Bear darker than reality, you know? But that's Hollywood. You need a bit of a villain, right? Like, you know, he does have that cocky swagger that he's proud to kill people, but really under the surface, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. And speaking of the fight, you know, another insane detail about Crowe and Bear going up against each other, you know, for the final bout, the crowd shots weren't filled with extras. Get that? It wasn't filled with extras. They used 15,000 blow-up dummies. 15,000. Can you imagine how long that took to get them all up? Oh my God. And in masks, and the place looked packed. And that's old school filming wizardry right there by Ron Howard. Now, yeah, the climax is the big fight. All right? Braddock and Bear. There's no two ways about it. And even if you know the film's history, you know, you do feel like you're watching it in real time, and you are so gung-ho for Russell Crowe to win here. You know, he's battered, bruised. He steps in the ring, and, you know, you do have this feel like life or death. He might not come back. And that's what he was up against. You know, Bear killed men in the ring. And he might not come back here. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And, you know, Paul Giamatti, what a performance. What a performance. He's screaming in Braddock's corner, spitting fire, fighting with them in spirit. You know, honestly, I honestly think it was definitely the best boxing coach performance ever of all time. Because it's the voice. You can feel every bit of intensity in Giamatti in this. You know, the boxing scenes, you know, wow. Crowe himself said they were five times tougher than Gladiator, you know. He was fighting trained boxers who occasionally forgot to pull their punches, and with the you know, the tire cam smashing into your face as an audience member, you don't just watch the fight, you kind of feel it. And in that final bell, when Braddock pulls off the impossible, you don't just cheer for a boxer, man. You cheer for every man and woman in the Depression who felt like forgotten, you know, beaten, hopeless. You know, Braddock became their champion. And before I get going, you know, the film closes with Braddock bathing in glory, but with him going home. You know, and going back to his family. Because that's what it's about, right? Not fame, fortune, survival. You know, and that's why Cinderella Man, I think it kind of hits so hard. It's not just a sports movie. It's the Depression story back in the day. And it's a family story. It's a human story. And Russell Crowe gives one of his most punishing and heartfelt performances. Now, he won the Oscar for Gladiator. He didn't get nominated for this. He could have been nominated for this. He was good enough, I think. But that's for people to decide. Paul Giamatti, electric. Renée Zellweger grounds it with heart. She really does. And, you know, the trivia makes you appreciate it more. The months of training, the concussions, the teeth, the blow-up dummies, the invention of the tire cam. You know, the whole thing was a war to make. I mean, and in the end, Braddock wasn't called the Cinderella Man for nothing. He was proof that sometimes when life can knock us down, we can still get back up. We can still get back up. And we should all listen to that, including me. You know, there's a message for every man and woman can take something from. You know, maybe you can relate to him. Maybe you can really relate to the guy. Maybe you can relate to his wife. Maybe you can relate to the kids. Maybe you've all been in that situation. Certainly Cinderella Man is one insanely underrated movie, and it just blows my mind that it didn't do better, because it deserves it. It deserves every bit of every trophy it could win. It deserved it.